Okay, so you know the drill, right? Every year on February 2nd, a huge chunk of the country stops what it's doing to watch a groundhog predict the weather. It's a little weird, it's been going on for over 100 years, and we absolutely love it. So what's the real story behind our favorite furry forecaster? Let's dig in.
Picture this. It's freezing, it's before dawn, and you're at a place called Gobbler's Knob in Pennsylvania. Thousands of people are gathered around, waiting for a group of guys in fancy top hats to pull a groundhog named Phil out of a tree stump. It's this amazing mix of a party and a weather report, and it is pure, unadulterated tradition.
Which, of course, brings us to the million-dollar question. I mean, really, we have Doppler radar, we have satellites, we have supercomputers running complex climate models, so why on earth do we still turn to a rodent for a weather forecast?
Well, to answer that, we've got to rewind the clock, way back. Back to a time when predicting the weather wasn't just a fun segment on the morning news, it was a critical skill you needed to survive.
See, long before any of our modern tech, people relied on something called weather lore. And this was basically a deep, street-smart understanding of nature. It was knowledge passed down from parent to child, built on centuries of just watching, paying attention to how birds acted, how thick an onion's skin was, or how the moon looked. These were all clues to what the weather was going to do next.
And what's so cool is that this created this incredibly rich, almost poetic language for the sky. People didn't just see clouds, they saw a mackerel sky, our mare's tails, and they knew exactly what those patterns meant. This wasn't just pretty language, it was a practical tool for reading the world around them.
Okay, so people were watching nature for clues. That makes sense. But how did this whole thing get so specific? Why one animal on one particular day? For that part of the story, we have to hop across the Atlantic.
The roots here go deep. It really starts with ancient European beliefs about animals being able to predict the changing seasons. By medieval times, that tradition had focused in on a specific Christian festival, Candlemas, on February 2nd, and the official forecaster? A hedgehog. Well, when German immigrants came to Pennsylvania in the 1700s and 1800s, they brought that tradition with them. And by 1887, it had morphed into the first official Groundhog Day.
And this is a perfect example of how traditions have to adapt to survive, right? The German settlers get to Pennsylvania and they've got a problem. No hedgehogs. So they improvised. They looked around for another animal that burrowed and hibernated, and they found the perfect local substitute, the groundhog. And just like that, a star was born.
And that brings us to the legend himself, Punxsutawney Phil. He's not just any groundhog. He's a full-blown American icon, with a whole mythology built up around him.
The whole show is run by the Punxsutawney Groundhog Club's inner circle, the guys in the top hats. And the rule is super simple. If Phil comes out and sees his shadow, he gets scared and runs back into his burrow, which means 6 more weeks of winter. If it's a cloudy day and there's no shadow, it means spring is coming early. Simple as that.
Okay, and here's where the story goes from a quirky tradition to just pure, delightful folklore. According to the legend, there's only ever been one Punxsutawney Phil. He's apparently kept alive by a secret elixir of life that the inner circle gives him every summer. So he's not just a groundhog, he's an immortal seer of the seasons. Now, of course, science tells a slightly different story. A real groundhog's lifespan is a little more down to earth. It's a fantastic story that adds to the magic, but let's just say there have probably been a few Phils over the last century or so.
So we have this charming, supposedly immortal groundhog with this long, rich history behind him. But beyond all the folklore and top hats, you have to ask the big question. Is he any good at his job?
Yeah, this is what everybody wants to know, right? If you strip away all the ceremony and just look at the cold, hard data, what does it actually tell us about Phil's weather predicting skills?
Well, let's just say you shouldn't base your vacation plans on his predictions. According to NOAA, that's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Phil's track record is only right about 35% of the time. Seriously, you'd literally have a better chance of predicting the weather by flipping a coin.
But get this, Phil isn't the only game in town. Oh no, there's a whole league of rodent rivals out there. And frankly, some of them are wiping the floor with him. You've got Staten Island Chuck, who boasts an incredible 85% accuracy rate. And General Beauregard Lee down in Georgia is hitting 80%. It turns out our most famous groundhog is actually the underdog in this little competition.
All right, so if it's not some mystical weather sense, what's actually going on here? Why does a groundhog even pop its head out of a burrow in early February? Well, the answer has everything to do with biology and almost nothing to do with meteorology.
You see, groundhogs are what you call true hibernators. They go into this deep state of suspended animation all winter. So when they start to emerge, it's not because they're checking the forecast, it's because their internal body clock is going off, triggered by things like the length of the days and the soil slowly starting to warm up. Their body is just telling them it's time to get up.
So let's recap. We know the science doesn't back it up. We know his accuracy is, well, pretty terrible. And we know there are other groundhogs who are way better at it. So why? Why are we all still so captivated by this one tradition in this one little town?
Because its real value has nothing to do with being right about the weather. It's a cultural link. It's this fun, goofy, lighthearted tradition that breaks up the gloom of a long winter. It connects us, even in a small way, to our ancestors who had to live by the rhythms of nature, a time when reading the world around you was a matter of life and death.
And maybe that's the real takeaway here. We live in an age where we can get a perfect weather forecast on our phones in seconds. We have all the data we could ever want. But data can't give us folklore. It can't give us a reason to gather together on a cold morning and share a laugh. So the question Groundhog's Day really asks us is this. In an age of perfect data, what's the real value of a good story?